sex is a behavior. It doesn't define who I am, and I know I'm more than that. And so it just wasn't that hard a decision to say, survive. Increasing my odds of survival or at the risk of losing my sex life was, to me, that was a pretty easy decision to make. My name is John. I'm from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. I was diagnosed with stage 4A prostate cancer in April of 2022. After my tissue exam following prostatectomy surgery, the prognosis was worse than I expected, and that hit me pretty hard. And I asked, why me, and how come this happened to me? And over the next several weeks and several months, I was able to shift that question to a much more productive one, which is, what can I do about it? And that's what I've been really focused on since. The first symptoms that I experienced were nocturia, which is frequent nighttime urination and a weak stream. I discussed that with my doctor, and my doctor recommended a PSA test, which I did. But I was taking a medication, finasteride, that suppresses the PSA score. And my doctor and I talked about that, but we weren't aware of how much we should multiply the PSA result by on the basis of this medication. And by the way, this medication was a vanity medication for hair loss. Finasteride is a drug that used to be sold under the name Propecia, and so my PSA test should have been interpreted as one that required further investigation. But many doctors, even good ones, don't realize that if a man has been on finasteride for more than 7 years, they should multiply the PSA test by 2.5. And so we didn't do that. And as a result, even the following year at my annual physical, my symptoms had worsened a little, but my doctor advised waiting another year to test because the test had been in the normal range the year before, and so we didn't test. Then by the time we tested 2 years later from the initial test, my PSA had more than tripled, and the cancer essentially had spread beyond the prostate. Following that PSA test, I had an MRI through a urologist that showed an abnormal result, and then that led to a prostate biopsy, which showed Gleason 9 cancer. But we had hoped that the cancer was contained. It appeared to be contained from the MRI, but it's obviously hard to tell. You can never be sure. By the time of my surgery, I came out of the surgery and got home the next day, and my email pinged, and I opened it, and it was the results of the tissue exam that I was receiving. And I logged into my medical center account, and I had read, several books on prostate cancer at this point, so I knew I knew how to read the results, and I went through the results, and it was just, my heart just sank as I went through the results. I looked at the list of adverse pathology, and was my cancer grade group 5? Yes. Was perineural invasion or PNI present, meaning the cancer has a higher chance of spreading? Yes. Was extraprostatic extension present? EPE means the cancer has spread outside of the prostate. Yes. Was there metastasis to the lymph nodes, meaning the cancer had spread to the local lymphatic system? Yes. Were there positive surgical margins, meaning some cancer was left behind and still inside me? Yes. And typed into that section was the words invasive carcinoma present at margin. And it was just a devastating prognosis. And a radiation oncologist later explained to me that the odds of having positive scores across all 5 of these areas were less than 5%. And so these exam results were really among the worst ones in terms of prognostic indicators. I had really hoped my journey with prostate cancer was going to be over with the surgery, but in fact, it was just beginning. I had two very different opinions. One was do nothing. The other was do 2 years of treatment and start right away. I got a third opinion that matched the do start treatment right away, and then I went for even a fourth opinion back to the original healthcare system that was treating me, and I went to the lead genitourinary oncologist there, and that person contradicted the advice of their radiation oncologist and said, I agree with Dana-Farber that you should start treatment right away. I started the hormone therapy first, did that for 3 months before they started the radiation, and then 8 weeks of radiation, then continued the hormone therapy for the balance of 2 years. So the treatment, the ADT, I had read that it would be a challenging treatment, and it lived up to its billing. It reduced my metabolism by 25 to 30%, hot flashes throughout the day and at night. I had side effects of ED and urinary incontinence from the surgery. The combination of ADT and radiation continued those side effects, which continue, through today. And there were other side effects, lots of inflammation in my knuckles and joints, trigger finger in almost all of my hands. And unfortunately for me, I was diagnosed with another condition called CMT during the course of my treatment. And apparently the ADT triggered the CMT symptoms. So CMT is Charcot-Marie Tooth Syndrome, which is named after the 3 doctors that named it, but it's a neurological condition that affects the nerves in your lower arms, hands, lower legs, and feet. And that was triggered by my treatment. And so that became, I had some pretty extreme side effects as a result of another condition I had being triggered by the ADT. It was hard to even type. I couldn't hold a pen. It was hard to hold anything. I couldn't open a water bottle. There was just a whole bunch of things. I'm now off the ADT, and a lot of those side effects have gone away. But I still maintain, unfortunately, side effects of the CMT. But I'm just dealing with those separately. I was very concerned going into the surgery that this could be the end of urinary continence and my sex life, and that was pretty scary stuff, and it turned out to basically be true. But I learned in coming out of sort of depression associated with the prognosis that that's not the end of your life. Life goes on, and I've discovered life is actually still pretty good. And so it was a tough adjustment, to have these fears come true. But at the same time, when you get over that and kind of find your new normal, life is really good. Our lives are so much more than our sex lives. I said to my brother the other night, I had 59 great years with a sex life and urinary continence, and I've had 3 pretty good years without them. And I never would have guessed that life could be so good. And it is. And it's incredibly sad to me because there are men who choose not to pursue treatment because they're afraid of these side effects. And I had a friend who was diagnosed almost at the same time as I was, a little earlier, with a very similar prognosis, and he could not bring himself to get treatment because he was too concerned about those side effects. And he regrettably, he passed away in May of last year, and it was really sad, and it was unnecessary, and he regretted his decision. On his deathbed, he was sorry that he didn't, he couldn't, find that inner strength to just deal with that. And I know people right now in my life that are still wrestling with this. I knew that ADT could be pretty hard on your body for 2 years, and so I really, that led me to try to. Once I shifted my mindset from why me to what can I do about it, that I was able to pivot. My metabolism is going to change dramatically. I'm going to need to know how many calories I'm consuming in order to make sure. I also was a very big muscular man. I was about 205, 208 pounds, and I did lots of weightlifting my whole life. And so I had all this extra muscle, and cutting my metabolism by 30%, this muscle and removing all the testosterone from my body for 2 years, it was going to atrophy and potentially turn to fat. And so it was critical for me to make sure that I did the right amount of exercise and I monitored my health. And to me, that's the monitoring really, really helped in understanding what I was consuming every day and making sure I was eating the right things in terms of more plant-based diet. I had read a study that was really groundbreaking study of it was 10,289 men. And this study showed that these nearly 10,300 men who all had a predisposed to having prostate cancer. They either were tested as predisposed or they had a father or a brother with prostate cancer, and they followed them for over 30 years. And those that followed healthy lifestyle patterns, including diet, exercise, weight, had nearly a 3 times lower risk of dying from prostate cancer than those with unhealthy lifestyle factors. And conversely, those at the low end of the spectrum for diet and exercise and weight had a 279% risk of dying from prostate cancer. So it was much higher. So this study, to me, it provided compelling evidence that these lifestyle factors play a very significant role. And so it was all about making sure I was optimizing these lifestyle factors. And that's really where I shifted my mindset from why me to what can I do about it, and really zeroed in on these lifestyle factors, which I later named the acronym TIDES for treatment, inspiration, diet, exercise, and sleep. And those 5 lifestyle factors are all controllable, and they can all make a difference. They have potential to make a difference. But I created a PDF for men with prostate cancer that really just highlights a few of those statistics and points people in the right direction for what kinds of foods and what kinds of diets and what kinds of exercising really is going to optimize the outcome, or all of these factors. How do you optimize and control these factors so that you can be the best you that you can be? And I sort of tell my story, but more importantly, I share statistics and things that have proven for some to be effective, so that men can take charge, hopefully, and realize they're not alone in this journey, and that there's a lot they can do to make a difference. And I'm grateful that I have a kind of cancer where there are things I can do that may make a difference, and I'm not going to squander that opportunity. My background as a healthcare project leader helped me to understand that that most successful projects begin the same way, which is identify what are the few controllable factors that will make a difference in the outcomes, and then diligently pursue those factors and look to optimize those factors. But it's true for anybody, for any task that any man may have begun. Whether you're fixing a shingle on the roof, you start by saying, what do I need for the tools? How am I going to make this repair? What do I need for tools? What are the things that are going to make the difference? I need the shingle. I need some tar. What are the few things that you need to make sure that this is a successful job? For me, it was a little more rooted in data and science and the experience of managing projects, but it's no different. And in a way, this may sound ridiculous, but prostate cancer as a hormonal cancer And, it's not, you can survive longer than, not always, but sometimes you can survive longer than other cancers. And it is one that can be influenced, and not in every case, but in many cases, it can be influenced by these different factors. And so, it's one of those things where if you have this cancer, there are things you can do that may make a difference. And so, I'm thankful in a way that I have this type of cancer, because there are things I can do that have the potential to make a difference. I'm not saying they will, but they may. And as of January 18th, I'm in remission. So I feel like I'm doing the right things, and it's really a matter of figuring out what those things are and focusing on them. Once I got off of the treatment completely, and my testosterone now has come back to the normal baseline level, and my cancer was now below 0.02 or undetectable. So I couldn't have been happier. I'm like, this is great. Unfortunately, when I had my visit with my doctor afterwards, he was a little bit of a killjoy and said, don't get too excited, because with your prognosis, the first year after the testosterone returns, the odds are about 50-50 that the cancer is going to recur. And then over the 3 years following the return of testosterone, the odds are about 75%. So, don't celebrate just yet. And I wasn't, I'm still celebrating. I'm happy. It's good news. But at the same time, I'm doubling down on all the things I need to do from a behavioral standpoint to make sure that I stay in remission. One of the things I've learned is not to look back, except to really relish the memories that I have. I'm much more focused on living in today than I was in the past. And I'm glad about that. I would never, I'm very happy about that. And I'm much more appreciative of all of the good things I have in my life. I like to say the fastest way to lose the blues is with an attitude of gratitude. And being grateful really shifts the mindset from what's wrong to what's right. And, I do this thing called a gratitour. It's like gratitude, only it's a tour, where I walk around my house, the outside of the house and the inside of the house, and I just take stock in all of the things I have to feel thankful for. And it's often the same things every time, but I just appreciate them. I've got this dog that's unconditionally happy and loves me no matter what. I've got a car that's reliable and will start up every time I turn the key. And I've got a refrigerator that's loaded with healthy, delicious fruits and vegetables. And, I've got a cozy house and a wife, my wife Cheryl, who's supportive and loves me, who's there for me all the time. And I just appreciate these things every day, even more than I ever did. And I really take time out to do my gratitour, every day, especially if I'm feeling down. I go on the gratitour and I just think about all these things. And I quickly lose the blues with my attitude of gratitude. One thing a lot of men hear is that men die with prostate cancer, not from prostate cancer. But the truth is, both things are true. The 1 in 44 men will die from prostate cancer, according to the American Cancer Society. And over 35,000 men in the United States a year die from prostate cancer, which is more than 100, which is about 100 men every day. So men do die from prostate cancer. It's the men that pursue treatment and do all they can to optimize their health outcomes who die with prostate cancer. So it's not an argument to not pursue treatment. When men hear men die with prostate cancer, don't be fooled into thinking that means you can forgo treatment, because that's not a good strategy for surviving prostate cancer. My advice for men who are diagnosed with prostate cancer is to try to realize how, that there are several factors that they can control that have the potential and may make a difference in both quality of life and health outcomes. And to realize that when you get through the treatment and get to the other side, there's a new normal there, and life is good. Life can be good. It will be good again. And don't get hung up on the fact that some of the side effects may be permanent. Like, that's sort of worst case scenario. And for me, I'm worst case scenario. And guess what? Life is still great. I'm really happy to be here. I want to be here for a long time, and I want to optimize all of the factors I can to make sure that happens. And that's my guidance for men with prostate cancer. Realize there are things you can do to make a difference, and don't get hung up. Don't end your life too quickly because you're afraid of side effects of treatment. Everybody's got to make their own decision, but life goes on, and it's pretty good on the other side.